hand over the reins, and I'm sorry about the pizza thing. It was, I got an email today that we maxed out the department credit card, so.
We got cheese on wheat. We're good to
Yeah,
go.
so I'll work on that next month.
All right. We'll go into our regular preamble. Welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. The chair will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, the chair will ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Any speakers would like to use the podium up there, please. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is, regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Alrighty. First off, do we have any matters from the public that are not on our agenda or on the consent agenda? Nobody in the room. Remy? Nobody on the Zoom. All right. Consent agenda. There's some discussion. Do I hear a motion to move 113 West Main to the regular agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to move 113 West Main to the regular agenda.
Very good. Do I have a second? I don't know. Do I need that? Okay.
You don't need it, actually.
Okay. If any member, that's right.
Right.
If any member wanted to be pulled. Okay, so 113 West Main Street, the railing and fence at the rear courtyard will be moved to the regular agenda under new items. For the consent agenda, the only remaining item is the approval of the meeting minutes from April 16th, 2024. Is there any discussion or corrections needed in the minutes?
I move to approve them.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here last month. Thank you.
Okay.
We don't have any deferred items this month, so we will move to our first new item coming off the consent agenda, 113 West Main Street. The project is a railing and fence at the rear courtyard. Mr. Werner, would you like to show a picture, please?
We have, yeah, let me do my song and dancing.
Sure.
And then, sorry, I'm having an eye moment. So this is a COA request for, the address is 113 West Main Street. Get it up on the big screen here. There it is. And you all saw this a year or two ago, the butterfly mural, and it was on the rear and the side. The request here is for the back, let me just click down, there's a paved area at the rear of the building facing Market Street, and the request is to fence that area in, create an enclosure for people in the building, just to create a little more privacy back there. And this is in the original application, it came in, it was, everything was the same, but they had shown sort of unfinished wood, or at least not stained or painted. I had mentioned to the applicant that typically we'd like to see fences, railings, wood painted or have an opaque stain, and also just suggested it would bring some color to the area. You all actually raised some interesting questions, so just to clarify that the guidelines do not require, or rather, the guidelines do not prohibit, if you will, unfinished wood, other than on the mall and the cafe spaces and vendor spaces seems to be where there's only some, something very specific about unpainted or unfinished wood. So if you all feel strongly about it one way or the other, you can certainly stick with unfinished if you'd like. I will say that the color choice, I treat it like I do with people painting their building. If you like blue and want it to be blue, you can certainly make it a condition it's blue, but if in 5 years they want to paint it to another color, I would evaluate it, or my predecessor would evaluate it, or my successor would evaluate it. The questions about, there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are some zoning questions, and mentioned this to Adrian, there, because the DX zoning, there are some constraints on fences. I think that was intended to address, that DX is the downtown, it's so you don't have fences on the mall. So had some conversation with zoning today about how are we going to treat this? What's the, how would they view this? We didn't complete that conversation. We're going to continue it on Thursday. So my recommendation is that you all treat this as, look at it through the lens of the design guidelines. And also, again, speaking more to the Channel 10 audience, everything that you review, if it requires a building permit, then an approved COA does not supersede that. It doesn't, nor does it supersede zoning. So if something comes in for a building permit and it's not consistent with the building code, or if it's in conflict with zoning, then they don't get a building permit issued, regardless of a COA or a BAR design review. So just to be clear on that. But if you all, wanted to include something if considering condition of approval, that it meet with the zoning, you certainly can, but it's not necessary. I would say that if this went through the process and, let's say, for example, the first panel there, zoning said that had to be moved back, or zoning said that height had to be a foot shorter, whatever, I would treat that as something I'd work with the applicant on. If it significantly altered this, I'd probably confer with you all, but this is rather minor, and I'm more concerned that zoning allows something than I am about zoning changing the design in a significant way. So apologize for the Planning 101 course there, but I know the applicant's here and can answer the questions. Some of them I answered today with the email I sent out. I'm satisfied with how Adrian responded to the question about the trash. I think that makes sense, the spacing of the beams, but, and I would have no problem, again, with the questions raised, I do recommend approval of the COA. So unless you have questions for me, Adrian's here and can answer your questions.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Would you like to present at all on this, or do you just want a Q&A?
It's fairly straightforward. Our owner just wants to turn what's a very
Sorry, do you
little
mind
used-
coming up here? Just,
Absolutely.
thank you.
So the owner here is just trying to turn this unused courtyard, which is used for loading purposes, just not very often, into something that his residents could use more often. And so that's pretty much the extent.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the public? All right, we'll go to questions from the BAR. Carl, did you have a question?
Yeah, I can't seem to, I can't get the internet to load, so I can't get the email that Jeff sent out. What was your response on the distance from the fence to the wall to prevent trash from piling up in there?
So the idea is we're going to try and get it as close to the wall as possible. Initially, we did want to try and set it above the wall, but the wall has a bit of a lean, and so we're nervous about adding any stress there. So the idea is to remove the bottom board. With this fence system, it can customize the distance between the rails. We can leave a rail off. It's very customizable, which is why we wanted to go with this one for maintenance purposes. So we'll leave that bottom free enough to be able to get a broom or a rake
Okay.
underneath.
Okay. I guess another question is, how did you determine where to start to switch from, I guess it's the lower height fence to the 6-foot fence?
So I tried to keep that back, just so there's a visual connection there at the pedestrian level. The higher fence was just to give the residents sort of a sense of that warmth, the security of sitting against a higher wall, but then wanted to step it down as we got closer to the sidewalk. So there's some visual connection there. And we were operating off of the standard distance for that system.
Does the retaining wall, it's about the same height all the way through, is that correct? I mean, it looks like it's a little taller towards your building, but,
Yeah, it's about the same height, and it's been leaning, I think, at that same angle for about 14 years. So I think it's going to stay there as long as we don't add anything to it.
that's my questions.
Okay.
And I have one on the gate. I guess you've got a gate, what I would call a pedestrian opening on the left, where you have the boards, and then you've got like basically a utilitarian cattle gate, as I would call it.
Right. We still
on the
have
right.
to get.
Is that just for loading?
Yeah, we still have to be able to let residents load in, and then the maintenance team does use that gate to get their vehicle up when necessary. It's not a frequent occurrence, but it's enough that we needed that vehicular size there.
Follow up on that, and that would swing into the courtyard.
Into the courtyard, yes.
And I don't know if I followed the whole conversation about the painted or versus unpainted. What is the proposal currently?
The original proposal was unpainted. We came back with painting it to pull in that color from the
Okay.
mural.
Okay, so that's the current proposal, is to paint it. Thank you.
Any more questions from the BAR? All right. Comments from the public?
See any?
And comments from the BAR?
Well, for the painted, unpainted, I think I figured out maybe where some of the confusion is under section 3, materials and textures, it talks about all exterior trim, woodwork, decking, and flooring must be painted or stained solid. It doesn't mention fences, but it does mention woodwork and stuff. And I'm not sure if that's how that whole precedent got slipped in here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Personally, I mean, I do think it's a downtown urban area. The paint makes more sense to me than leaving it unfinished to just weather. I know there is precedent for some weathered wood out there, but I do think that it's a more appropriate to paint it. I'm a little bit struggling with the idea that it is a 6-foot tall fence in a front yard. I know it's not facing the front, and the transparency that's shown is great, but it is, if this was a house on Park Street, we wouldn't allow this until it gets back behind the front of the house. So I do see that you're pulling back where the 6 foot starts. That's just what's got me a little bit torn. I understand the reason for it. I understand why the description you provided for the maintenance of any trash or something that might slip under there. That makes sense to me, but yeah, I guess I'm curious. Am I the only one that's got to hold up on the 6 foot fence that's kind of sticking all the way out in the Market Street?
I could say I couldn't help but think of it in that one section of the guidelines, the rear buildings. And it's something, again, to add to our design guidelines discussion as well, because it is, we do have other situations like this.
Right, technically the front's on West Main, right?
Am I allowed to respond to this?
Yes, of course.
Okay, given that on the other side of the retaining wall, it will only be about that 4 feet tall, it just wouldn't provide the same security for the residents there.
Oh,
So
there's a
that-
change in topo?
Yes,
Okay, got
yes,
it.
so that retaining wall is retaining grade, there, so.
And the shrubs that are to remain are they're over 6 feet tall now, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, in the walls and fences guideline, fences should not exceed 6 feet in height in the side and rear yards. So I think there's an argument this is a rear yard,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, okay. I'm not gonna kill this thing for, I just wanna raise that point, because it
Sure.
does, to me, this is also a front yard. It's a double front
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, but
It's- It's
it
Market Street.
Well, for
faces
the,
on an important street that,
for that same reason, my issue was kind of in the same way, was the little one segment that's not doing anything on the street. And I didn't know if that was really functionally necessary. It seems a little vulnerable. I could maybe see a design argument, but from an urbanistically, it's not really helping anything.
The open, like the vehicle gate or the?
The last segment that's all the way out at the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 feet high?
That is.
is there any reason why you didn't bring that out to the street or to the right of way?
Bring the
The gates.
vehicular gate. It was
Yeah.
more so that there's a place, if the vehicle has to pull in, somebody's gonna have to open the gate.
Got it.
So they would pull along the street.
I guess maybe a question would be, why do you have that extra section?
It was just to bring it out to the sidewalk. So it's getting the fence cohesively to run from the building to the sidewalk, essentially.
I think it's aesthetically better.
I feel bad to pick at something like this, because it really is a simple request. My concern was precedent, but, I'm fine to approve it if I don't wanna hold it up. Did wanna make sure you had a solution for getting junk out of there that might fall in, and you solved that.
Yeah, that was a great
So,
question.
it's,
Are we ready for a motion? May I?
Certainly.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the design guidelines for ADC districts, I move to find the proposed fence railing at 113 West Main Street satisfies the VAR's criteria to compatible with this property and other properties to downtown ADC district, and the VAR approves the application submitted with a blue fence, with the condition of wood planks be painted or have an opaque stain with the color to be okayed by staff.
I second.
So we're not approving it as blue? I'm sorry.
I think we should strike the words blue fence.
Let's get out of the blue fence.
Let's just say
But
that.
painted?
Whatever Jeff likes.
But it will be painted.
It will be
Yes,
painted.
will be
It
painted.
says that.
Or an opaque stain.
Or an opaque stain.
I think-
Second, or did you second?
Roger?
Third.
I meant James, second.
I think, okay, I think the intent of the motion is basically as written.
Yes.
And so, thank you, Mr. Bailey, for the motion, thank you, Mr. Burrell, for the second. He beat you to it. I'll call a vote. Breck,
Aye.
Ron,
Yes.
Raj,
Aye.
Tyler,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
I'm blanking, Sherry,
Sure.
Carl.
Yes.
It's okay, John.
There you go. And I vote aye.
I did
Thank you
say-
very
and I
much.
didn't
Thank
vote.
you.
Thank you.
I am aye.
Yeah.
James, that happened to me too as chair. So I made a little list at the beginning.
Meeting's going off the rails.
I wonder, are they
Already.
gonna, they're probably gonna put the recycling bins in that little nook at the street.
Well, it's my brother's name, so I get it all the time. Alrighty, working out the kinks.
Let me put away my mask for a second, and just so that next up,
Mural.
Muriel. Yeah, if someone's always asking me about murals, and I want to go, it's not a mural. But, next up, 207 14th Street. Let me scroll down to the right graphics. This is probably the best one there. And I know we briefly discussed this at the preliminary, or at the early meeting, but to reintroduce this, the request is for 207 14th Street. It's a non-contributing structure in the, it's the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable Neighborhood ADC District. The request is to, you all saw this a couple times over the last few years, most recently, substantial renovations and rehab to the, not renovate, rehabilitation of the exterior, and drove by there the other day. It really looks nice. It's operating as a hotel. It's a neat building. I probably should be a contributing structure, but when the district was established, it was not. The request is this area here above this breezeway entry to install a mural. We do not have the artwork for that, but I wanted to bring it forward. And as I had mentioned earlier, one way to approach it was approval of a mural in this location, and then when the artwork was complete, if there seemed to be any issues, to bring it back to the BAR. One caveat being, regardless how it's done, if the mural is determined by zoning to be a commercial sign, then it's not allowed. So, that's not a burden on you all. In the conversation that you had earlier, the sense was to have it, you can discuss about this location and where it should be or not be, but that a determination for a COA would require reviewing of the proposed artwork. And my suggestion is that the BAR have a conversation with the applicant, who is here, resolve any questions. I think this is a painted building, so it meets all the requirements for allowing a mural there. I think you can get a lot of that out of the way, and then have the applicant request a deferral so that they can get that artwork completed, and then return and get the formal approval if granted. So I'm going to hand it off to you all and Jim, and
Good evening. I really don't have a presentation per se, mainly here just to answer any questions I might be able to help with. As he mentioned, we're basically looking to put a decorative mural on the really stark space of the building to kind of bring color to the building and to the area as well. We are working with the Charlottesville Mural Project to do that. The cost is going to be anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 depending on the design. So from our perspective, we're wanting to try to get at least approval that a mural can go on there before we start the design work with them and the expense of that. That way we can bring the design back to you before actually having it painted, and if there's any adjustments that need to be made, do so at that point.
All righty. We'll go through our process. Are there any questions from the public? All right. Any questions from the BAR?
So can you give us any idea about what you're thinking about?
Sure. So first and foremost, there's no political message or anything that could be perceived as anything. The hotel it's a mid-century modern design. The theming throughout the guest rooms and everything. So the color schemes and designs would be something that would tie in to the feel of the 60s. It would not have any wording on it or anything that could be construed as signage or anything like that either. That's the extent of the design at this point. So
You have a size in mind?
based on the space, we're looking at roughly an 8 by 8 foot by 8 foot section.
All right. Any more questions?
and just didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it would be helpful if, I know there's a blue circle, but if there is a space, if there are alignments, if there are a scale, however ratios that you feel should be established for where artwork could go, that would be very helpful in their process.
I think the staff report's done a good job of calling out not, marring any architectural features on the facade there, but beyond that, I think it's a fine place for a mural. I think one thing we talked about at our pre-meeting, I think you listened in on some of that, was there's a number of us that do feel we should see the content before we can make an official, final ruling. And as Jeff described, that possibly the process would be that you request a deferral, and that gives you plenty of time to get that design done before you bring it back to us. And if we ask to defer it, then you have 1 month to get that turned around. So it's a lot tougher.
Sure.
And I think, it's fair to maybe have a straw poll, if anybody,
I think so. But any other comments?
non-binding, but
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the way that the staff report's marked out, places that you're not gonna touch with the mural, I don't see that you could have any possible way of this being problematic. I don't wanna say guaranteed, but it seems pretty guaranteed. As a side though, I would love to see us loosen up our guidelines on murals, because frankly, I think it's much more interesting if it interacts with the architecture and wraps the corners and touches the windows.
I was
and
about to say,
everything
I
else.
would love to see it wrap the corner
But,
and actually be on two facades, because you've got white space on the other side. I was thinking of some Trompe l'oeil thing, like some really creative thing where you see one thing
Do we have?
on the
murals in
front
our
side,
guidelines?
and
We should-
then it turns or, tricks one on the second facade. Anyway, I'm not an artist, but I had the, there is a lot of white space
There's a lot of white space.
that on the other facade. So I was just going to comment, I wouldn't actually want to hamper you by saying you need to be 8/8 above, centered over the breezeway door and 2 feet up, you've got a lot of white space there, and it'd be cool to use it in a very creative way. I don't, if you wanted a piece of art hung up there, you would put a piece of art up, but a mural is quite different, so.
Yeah. And again,
I agree with Sherry. I don't think we want to limit you to these 8x8 dimensions, or I think we want to give the artist some flexibility here.
But if you stuck with those, you'd be fine, right?
Yes. Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
so, and again, so really the main point of this is just to make sure that a mural will be permitted,
Yes.
and then come back with a design for approval from that. And I think that definitely helps with the creativity from the artist, by not being limited to the 8x8, gives them a little more space to be.
Yep. I agree. I think this is a great space for a mural. Looking at the street view, I would also, I think that actually the facade further to the north on the right-hand side of the building is pretty opaque as well, and it seems like mural could help liven that if
I think
it were
the
to
only-
grow.
Start with one.
And the main reason, the left part is much more visible.
Yeah.
That tree does really kind of hang in front of the right side of the building.
you didn't mean that north elevation, you meant,
and is the
No
Mod
further
Pod
driving
always
wise.
like that, or I thought I
No,
saw
so
it.
it is actually
part different.
permanent.
Right.
That was where it was originally placed.
Okay.
And then the fire marshal said we were too close to the next door
So
building.
now it's kind of perpendicular to the building a little with.
It's
the-
actually parallel to the frontage of the building.
Right, okay, yeah, that's right. That's what I meant.
so having spent part of last week in Cincinnati, the artwork on the walls, it's really fascinating where, that sort of an end of a building that maybe a part of the block's been removed, and how, it really activates it. I agree with you all entirely. We should probably allow more, and be, encourage more. The only thing I would ask in this is that if, and in helping Jim in the conversation with the artists, if there are any of these, I really, with this note, kind of kept it above that opening, away from the window and the canopy and below that band, brick band. If there's anything there that you want to remove, and Sherry, I thought interesting what you said about letting the artist incorporate things into the artwork. So if any of that wants to be scrubbed, you could address that now.
I think the safe answer is to look at that note, but I think what we're all saying, and someone correct me if I'm misspeaking, you can ignore it entirely if you want to. Or the applicant can ignore it entirely if they want to. But the really safe thing would be to.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's section J in chapter 6 is really the pertinent section in our guidelines to look at, if you haven't. And I think, one guideline that jumps out at me is, painting directly onto the walls of a non-contributing building. And then a side note about a contributing building, but will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Technically, this is a non-contributing building, so we're going to look at it on a case-by-case basis, which I think actually, from what I'm hearing, is going to give you plenty of freedom to do what you like to do. I think there's some sentiment that this would be a great contributing building to the district, but it's currently not. So, that plays in your favor, I think.
And for example, I think the belt course could be used as part of the mural in a contrasting color. I think that's what we're saying. We don't want it to disappear. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the mural has to be limited to the area below. It would be kind of cool to use that as some sort of framing or some part of the mural. I don't know if I'd want it to be painted over. Like I said, then it would disappear and it is a significant feature, but I wouldn't say that you have to stay away from it. So you've got a lot of space.
I'll just add to the conversation. I just want to commend you on what you've done so far, looking at
thank
the
you.
before and after. I think it's worth saying that, I think you've treated this with, sensitivity and a grace and a simplicity that's really adds to the street. And I think that you're totally capable in what you've done so far to show us something that we'll be excited about in the next turn.
Thank you. It's been a fun project, to say the least.
I think getting it on the register, whether contributing or not, on our local designation, getting it on listed, getting it that eligibility for rehab tax credits, which I know you all had experience with. So that's one of the things I'd like to see. I don't know, but does that help with that give you the clarity you'd like to going forward?
I think so. I'm being told that yes, we can, and that we'll submit the art for review prior to moving forward.
So, in the spirit of a straw poll, I just want to make sure, does anybody have hard objections to a mural at this location? Just want to make sure we give our applicant
Strong
the
encouragement.
feeling he's looking for.
I thought the straw poll was going to be, is anybody willing to do what Jeff had originally said, which was let Jeff approve the mural later on?
I'm not ready to do that. I just think it's a
No.
bad precedent.
There are
I
too
think we
many
just need to.
I also, Breck, I think brought a very good point up during the pre-meeting, which is the BAR is an open public meeting, and so we need to make sure we provide that forum for the public to comment on these things. So I think you're getting good feedback from the folks sitting up here. Once you bring it before us, there will be an opportunity for the public to speak. So that's just part of the process.
So the next step is a deferral?
Correct. So the next step would be if you'd like to request a deferral from us.
Okay. Does that need to be in writing or just right now?
You just say,
I do.
I would like to request a deferral.
okay.
Do we need a motion to accept that
We do.
deferral?
Correct.
Yeah.
So moved?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you. Good luck. We're
Thank
looking
you for your
forward to
time.
seeing
Thank you.
Yeah. Come back with something cool.
All right.
Oh, thank you. Otherwise, James might forget his name.
I might, yeah.
We'll go like this.
Thank you. But David's like one of my middle names, so I should be good. Sherry's not.
Sherry's not your middle
No.
name.
All right, so next on our list is 130 Madison Lane. We had talked to the applicants about
All right.
bumping it to after our preliminary discussion of Wortland. So would you guys like to wait for Kevin? We're happy to go to the next discussion.
So I think you're gonna end up with me.
Okay.
It's fine.
That's no problem.
It does take at least 15 minutes to get through the off the plane into the exit doors, I know.
And then he's the
Oh,
we
you
did.
did. I thought he was coming into Charlottesville.
I love
No
always.
promise. All right, so yes.
let's not wait for that.
We're not going to wait for that. So this is 130 Madison Lane. It's St. Elmo Hall.
What,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I could just use this if it's what he sent. Can we get to it? Unless something's changed, but I don't know. Let's just do this.
Jeff's pulling up our
Pull this up.
updated application.
All right.
So
you
Bob,
just-
since you're there, we do need another architect coming up in August.
We do.
Oh, really? You know, my wife is now on the planning board, so I think there'd be a conflict of too powerful.
Oh, I don't think so.
No?
PRW
Oh.
has basically put all their employees on all the,
Oh, really? That's
all the
true.
boards.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I just want to add on that. I was not aware she was an architect at the ERB because I hadn't met her yet, but I'm sitting there listening going, this woman's an architect. And she knows.
She's better than an architect. She teaches architecture, so
It was
she lives and breathes it.
very good. All right, so, wait, let me just, sorry, I'm getting lost in thought. This is a COA request for some renovations at St. Elmo's Hall Fraternity House over at the university. This has come to you a few times in the past couple of years for, most recently, renovations or rehabilitation of the roof and the dormers. There's been some things over the years with the railing at the top. This request is coming in to change out one of the windows within the center dormer to make it an operable door. And with that, to make that door the full height to be consistent with building code, requires some alterations on the floor level above the portico. And I'll get back to that in a second. And then at the rear is a new egress from the second floor that will involve a new stair, two wall lights, which will match what's on one side of the building already. The new door at the back will, modified masonry opening, although the width will remain, the height will be changed. And that new door will be manufactured to simulate the window that's there now with panels below it. So that's what's going on there. That is a function of emergency egress. The circumstances on the front, this is a space that is used. It's accessed. There's, I would say, simply it's an acknowledgement that it will be accessed, and whether it's out windows or up the gutters. So in lieu of saying no, you can't go there, the next best is acknowledging that is going to occur, and to make that access in and out safe and meet code. The window that's currently in the middle was installed, I think, in a 1980 renovation, so this is not replacing an existing window, although the windows that's there does simulate the windows that are on either side of it. So in that regard, I think those circumstances here help me be comfortable with this change. It's been thoroughly documented what's occurring. If it's ever has to be replaced, we know it was changed. It is the change in a way that meets the building code relative to the height of this door, or the door that will be installed. So my recommendation is approval on this, but I'll leave that to you, and Mr. Pinio will answer any questions. Do you have any for me? And just tell me when I'll flick the slides.
Okay. So Kevin Schaefer, typically, he's running this project. He's away today, so he's given me the very well scripted. He's usually very well prepared, so I'm just going to read And Kat is the project manager on it as well, so she's here to answer questions as well. So I'm just going to do his presentation. While we're here today to discuss the required path of egress from the portico roof, a significant amount of relevant work has already been performed at the roof of the portico in an effort to ensure its longevity and protect the occupants. It's relevant enough that we'd like to take a moment to review the work performed already and then get into the next natural evolution. So I think the next slide. On July 7th, and this project has kind of come to us organically. It started as a, kind of a triage, that we have some significant rot. It's an unsafe situation. Can you help us, ameliorate it and get safe? On July 7th of 2022, we were called by concerned members of the St. Elmo board regarding the state of the portico roof. At the subsequent site visit, significant amounts of rot were discovered through extensive water infiltration of the existing rubber roof. Images on the screen here show the extent of damage to the roof, and a first for me was squeezing water out of saturated roof sheathing. Most concerning in this scenario was the failure of the railing attachments, and the portico roof was immediately closed by the board to all unauthorized occupants. Next slide, please. A follow-up site visit on July 13th with Steve Barber from Dunbar Engineering involved careful selective demolition of the portico ceiling in order to better analyze the state of the joists. Water infiltration was discovered along the porch beam, as well as some degradation of the original historic joists. This degradation was not as severe as the roof sheathing and sleepers that compromised the upper layer of the roof, but was noteworthy enough to require reinforcing of the historical structural elements, both the joist and the beam. Next slide, please. Steve Barber of Dunbar proceeded with the design that would immediately address the existing conditions, and this maintenance project to stabilize and reinforce the historic roof was performed over the summer of 2022. With the roof open, the St. Elmo board opted at the time to design for an assembly use loads and code-compliant horizontal loading on the guardrail in an effort to ensure the safest, most accident-resistant portico, or rooftop portico. Next slide, please. It's no secret that residents of student housing along Madison Lane often occupy areas not authorized for use or occupancy. Acknowledging this fact, we as architects and engineers, with the support of the St. Elmo board, have the ethical and professional requirement to plan for and design with this in mind and make this space as safe as possible. The proposal in front of you outlines the next steps in doing so by making code-compliant egress from the portico rooftop. Next slide, please. The proposal outlines two ways of ensuring safe egress. And what you're looking at here, we have a 3D point cloud scanner. We'd love to sell this service to anybody who wants it, but it's a digital duplicate, and it allows us interior spaces, exterior spaces, floor elevations. We know what the existing conditions are, and we know how to design to it. So there's that level of kind of review. We scan the entire building and all of the roof structures. Let's see, where am I? That'd be right. The proposal outlines two ways ensuring safe egress must occur. The first is through creating a code-compliant egress door from the portico roof. In order to ensure the correctness of the proposed design, he already had this, we utilized our 3D point cloud scanner to understand exact elevations of both the interior floor level and the exterior roof level. By understanding these elevations, we are able to confidently propose a solution that lowers the elevation of the roof by approximately 10 inches while still retaining the historic joist and original trim for the existing portico. Code compliance necessitates a 3-foot platform on either side of the door, and that's why lowering the roof helped. Next slide, please. The new egress door will be custom fabricated from wood and made to match the existing adjacent historic windows. The introduction of the egress door does not require altering the shape or form of the original dormer. We aim to merely lower the sill of the existing opening, grille patterns, and profiles the grill patterns and profiles will match the adjacent historic windows, and jamb trim that matches the existing profiles will extend down to the lower roof deck. Code-compliant lighting at a door along an egress path will tactfully be placed at the sides of the roof cutout. Next slide, please. It should be noted that the existing central dormer window is not original and was replaced twice between 2008 and today. A metal French casement window is in the opening currently. The image below highlights the difference between the original opening and the metal replacement window. Next slide, please. The lowering does, however, drop the elevation of the waterproof membrane below the adjacent gutter line, requiring us to propose 2 new copper downspouts directly behind the existing portico columns. These downspouts and scuppers will match the existing original downspouts found on the exterior corners. Next slide, please. The image of the existing, this image of the existing conditions, as well as the others provided in the submittal booklet, show how the alterations will have minimal to no impact from a pedestrian perspective, as an existing curb on the top of the portico conceals the view of the roof. Next slide, please. The second requirement for making the portico roof a code-compliant occupiable space is the introduction of exterior egress stair on the rear facade and contained with the existing walled courtyard. In order to access the stairs, this proposal outlines lowering the sill of an existing window opening. The width of the masonry opening is able to remain as is, a new custom wood door intended to replicate the look of the adjacent original windows by replacing jamb and header trim profiles, grille trim locations and profile, and then feature a solid 2-panel section below. Next slide, please. As staff mentioned, in 2008, the BAR reviewed and approved changing windows to doors on the rear elevation of this building. So this approach is not without precedent. It was also imperative for us to avoid the large Palladian window, which this proposal successfully accomplishes. Next slide, please. The overarching message of this presentation is life safety. How can we create a code-compliant path of egress from this roof in order to officially consider it an occupiable space? However, life safety cannot be the only criteria for design in a house of this historic prominence and contextual importance. Recognizing the significance of the district and the structure, the proposal has gone to great lengths to ensure a historically compatible and contextually sensitive intervention that meets our egress requirements. We want this building to be used safely, but we also want it to last another 200 years, and we aim for it to continue to be an important stitch in the fabric of the corner ADCD. St. Elmo's board should be commended for their proactive approach. The board has left no stone unturned when it comes to encouraging us to explore the solutions to the challenge at hand. Last slide, please. Despite this being the first time in front of the board, we would like to request a vote, if possible, to allow the construction of this project to proceed this summer while students are away. We are eager to hear any comments and feedback you might have, and we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Kevin will be proud. Do we have any questions from the public?
Nobody is
Okay.
online, so no.
Questions from the BAR?
What is the material of the floor of the occupiable balcony?
Do you mean like not the jamb, but like the floor itself of the deck?
Yeah.
That would be like a 2-inch rubber tile.
Okay.
And that's existing, right? Is that there?
Currently, there are like wooden deck tiles.
Okay.
But that's all. 'Cause we don't do that.
I have a constructional question about the slate that you're adding. You're adding, of course, a slate at the bottom. Is that right?
I believe we're removing the slate below the central window.
But then I saw a note.
Yeah, click your-
Because the deck
New
is,
shingles to match.
Because you're
Oh,
lowering the
yeah.
deck.
As the
lowering
deck
the deck,
Sure,
have to
yeah,
add a couple
yeah.
rows, I know where you're going.
Yeah, how, have you thought, what's the extent, what's gonna happen to the existing slate? Does this have to be removed, and how much of it needs to be removed?
Didn't we just replace this?
So the slate, yeah, the slate that's on there now came before us
Okay.
about a couple years ago.
Mhm.
So it is synthetic slate.
Oh, okay.
I guess the tricky part is usually you start at the bottom, and work your way
Right.
up.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier with synthetic slate
Synthetic.
than it is with, yeah,
I guess that's probably true.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
big-
it's not an issue if it's not a historic slate,
Yeah.
so, that was my question.
Okay. That's good to know. All right.
Does the building currently function with just one stair, or what's the purpose for the second, the exterior rear egress stair?
Basically to make this code compliant because of the load of that, and the capacity to be able to get out. We need two forms of egress because of the occupancy load of this,
Yep.
of this porch. That's right.
I mean, on the front of the building, basically, the only visible change we're gonna see are the two copper downspouts, correct?
Basically. Yeah, because the sill detail on the middle, on the door, you'd have to be maybe from Bailey, like you just won't be able to see it. It's so high up that elevationally.
Well, there's a curb that goes around, too.
There is, and that's historic. You can see it in that picture, and you can see it in the old, it's a kind of a cool, it's kind of weird in some ways, but it mirrors the portico columns, and it kind of jumps up and moves, and that's why the railing goes with it. But it is a historical, piece from the original portico design.
Any other questions?
There's some festoon lighting up there that's
I just battered you.
in some of the pictures, but I'm assuming that's not part of the proposal.
No.
The string lights,
Yeah.
Disappeared.
they're seasonal. All right, any comments from the public?
I'm ready with a motion, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
No one saw
okay.
online.
Any comments from the board
Okay.
before we make a motion?
I like the idea. I think it's a great proposal.
Yeah, you did a nice job of matching the windows with the new.
I gotta come to this more often.
Right.
It's just life affirming.
Kevin usually starts with like a gushing thank you to the
Oh, yeah,
DNR.
thank you so much. He didn't set me up there.
Too late.
Yeah, too late.
All right, Ms. Lewis?
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the city's ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed alterations to the west and east elevations at 130 Madison Lane satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this district, and the BAR approves the application as submitted.
I'd like to second that. All right, Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman,
Aye.
Mr. Whitney,
Aye.
Mr. Burrow,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
All right,
Okay, next up,
other business
Still like
section.
pictures of me
Yes.
used in applications,
There's what? There's, oh,
That, the Easters.
I know, I
image.
was looking for James. I found myself.
James wasn't at Easters.
I was not
I
at that Easter's.
Easters? Ron and I were.
All right, we're done with our regular, or rather, new items, and we're on to other business. There's a preliminary discussion for a development at the northeast corner of Wurtland and 10th Street.
All right, let me just tee this up, and y'all are back there. They actually got enthused when I said we might be bumping them ahead, so that's a good thing it didn't take too long.
Record time tonight,
It's,
for now.
Well, we're supposed to be at 6 o'clock.
I used to keep track of when we stopped and started things, but
We did
there's
move
no
some up.
trend line whatsoever.
I think no
So,
pizza until 300.
this is not, this is a preliminary discussion. They are required for any project within a ADC district or an IPP in excess of $350,000. It's a rather low bar to get over, but this project is very unique. And I've had conversations with the applicant for several months, and I hope I didn't get too confusing with the whole, there are grant funds associated with this, and because of the proximity to the National Register District, just wanted to make sure that, you know, that distinction between what's on the National Register and what is a local designated district, make sure that we didn't have any problems later down the road. But this is a project being pursued by University Real Estate Foundation. It is at that northeast corner of 10th Street and Wirtland. It is, the 3 parcels here are not within the district, but the reason this is coming to you all is that there's a segment of the parking lot at Stacy Hall that will be incorporated into this. That is within the West Main ADC district, therefore, well, let's put, if this had been a UVA project, then the university is not subject to local zoning. However, this portion will become part of the VREF project, so that's why it's now subject to zoning and subject to BAR review. It's a, normally I know in a preliminary discussion, I offer some sort of a review of what's nearby, setbacks, step backs, spacing between buildings, heights, materials. I didn't know exactly what to do with this one, because this also is now probably one of the first large-scale projects you all have looked at, well, maybe other than 218 West Market, which will be following the new zoning ordinance, and which has different setback requirements than the previous code. Now, fortunately, the height that's allowed here is, I think, up to 13 stories with the bonus. That's not being pursued, so that makes life a little easier in regards to we're not getting into a very, very, very tall building and having that discussion. But I don't know, relative to this, to the spacing and setbacks, I've come down and after some thought last week, again, when I was in Cincinnati at a new urban Congress discussion, sort of, and bounced the idea off some folks there that this really is this site allows, we want a good design there, but there's really not necessarily it's not taking its cues from what's next to it or what's nearby. There was even a suggestion of, well, can you tell your BAR that they don't review it? And well, the code doesn't allow that discretion on your part. But I do think that there's a way to look at this, you know, with certainly fitting into the city, but that it's not taking its cue from the spacing of the buildings across the street at Wirtland or the building forms that are up on West Main. So, not saying it's a free-for-all, but I think that there are some opportunities here for architectural creativity. The other piece that about the zoning, and I don't know, I can't answer it tonight, is obviously with buildings, with the code, there's the open space requirements. There's also the tree canopy requirements. What we're finding in some of the development review discussions is the buildings are being proposed right up to the parcel line or right up to the setback, but that's not leaving enough space for that required tree cover. And I'm not prepared to say tonight what should be required, what should be left, and what space is needed for those trees to go. But I know that landscaping is under your purview, and it's something that you pay a lot of attention to. But so I'm introducing this with a lot of caveats, and I apologize for that. But like other large-scale projects, and I think I shared this with you all, you all are not allowed to approve incremental COAs. You can't vote and say, yeah, we're fine with the height or the massing scale, as had been the case several years ago. But we've understood with these projects that there's the iterative development of the design and the building of the design. So this is the first preliminary discussion. At some point, preferably the next round, I would ask you all to make it a formal application, but the understanding that it may be, those discussions may end with as with the prior, or with 14th Street. You all, we know that you're not going to vote on something, so you would say, all right, request a deferral, and we can talk about that process. It's a bit of a gentleman's agreement or general person's agreement, but that's the best way we found to make it function. And the reason I have that formal application is that, yes, we could say we're just going to have a series of preliminary discussions, and then when you're ready, bring back the final plan. But then that sort of says to the public, oh, we'll let you know when. So that formal application then makes it a public process. Not that this isn't. So long-winded there, but I think I gave myself a good notes for how to, what I got to do next on this. But again, this is not entirely in the district. You can apply the West Main criteria as you wish, but I would suggest you not let it constrain you all. And with that, I'll step back if you have any questions for me. Otherwise,
I think the floor is yours if you'd like to make a
and
presentation.
if you have an image you want me to put up there, say so and I'll find it.
If you could go to our first slide.
Okay.
As an employee of the firm doing the design work on this one, I'm going to recuse myself.
And I will, just one image while I'm scrolling here. The old Sanborn maps, anything that was here earlier is gone. So there are no historic buildings or structures on this. It really is to a certain extent an empty canvas. So,
Is the Coke building an IPP?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let me get it to a. Is that? All right.
Hi, I'm JT Englehart with National Housing Trust, a member of the development team that was selected by the UVA Foundation, or UREF, to develop affordable housing at this site. This initiative, I think, was widely known, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But our proposal and our development team consists of the chosen developers for this site. Consist of Preservation of Affordable Housing, a nonprofit based in Boston that has significant experience doing large-scale development with universities and other institutions. National Housing Trust, where I work, we co-own and are co-developing Kindlewood, formerly known as Friendship Court Apartments, with Piedmont Housing Alliance, and WDC, Wycliffe Development Consulting. They're Northern Virginia-based SWAM, and the three, and they're a for-profit. National Housing Trust is a nonprofit. The three of us are the development team, and our proposal was really predicated on meeting the goal set out by the UVA Foundation in their RFQ and RFPs to thoughtfully and collaboratively develop affordable housing. Since then, the new zoning code was enacted, and we're really just this preliminary, and we're in a process, and Our goal is to design this in context and collaboratively with the university, with the surrounding community, and something that is financeable. So there are a lot of constraints, but there's a lot of experience on our team, including Grimm and Parker. And Liz can take it from here.
Thank you, JT. So I just want to walk you quickly through an outline of the site. Jeff has sort of given us a good overview to begin with, but a lot of the reason that we're here tonight is that we have a lot of questions about how to apply the ADC recommendations and guidelines. So as Jeff mentioned, there are 4 properties that are in the process of being combined to become the new project site. And so part of that will include a subdivision of the current Stacy Hall lot. Go ahead, Jeff. And so just the same image, but giving you that 3D overhead view. So the total lot acreage will be just over 2 acres. And so you can see it again here in the bird's eye. And I think it's helpful to just get to really see that context of what the other buildings are doing. And I know this is an intersection that most of you probably go past frequently, but really understanding how different those different approaches to this intersection are depending on which way you're coming, and the architectural context as you come to this intersection. Next slide, please. So this is the current state of the site. There is a small apartment rental building that is on the property. It's the one that has the buffalo mural on it. But the rest of the site is almost entirely parking lots. And there's a little bit of landscaping here and there, but primarily either weeds or, self-sown trees. Next slide, please. So the new zoning code, this site is zoned CX8. And you can see some of the surrounding zones. We're mostly surrounded by CX8, but there is the some residential across Wurtland as well. So our allowable base height is 8 stories, but the affordable housing bonus would allow us to go up to 11 stories. And as JT mentioned, because the project is planned to be 100% affordable, that could apply to us, but that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing something that would be 6 stories high. And next slide, please. So here's where it gets complicated. As Jeff mentioned, we're straddling the West Main ADC. However, immediately across the street from us, we're looking at the Wurtland ADC, and additionally, the Coca-Cola building is an individually protected property, and that's immediately across 10th Street from us. And to the south side of the property at 10th and a half, you'll notice we're right up basically against the face of an existing contributing building to the West Main ADC that is, that is hugging the property line. So, and you see the existing structure that is on site already, which is not a contributing structure to any district. Next slide, please. So just a reminder of the flavor of the 2 districts that we're talking about right here. So the contributing structures in the West Main District that are in our immediate area are a little bit of everything. We have, monumental feeling buildings. We have 1950s shopping centers. We have historic homes. We've got it all. Next slide, please. So this slide is specifically looking at the buildings that are across the street from us on Wurtland, as well as sort of what's happening along 10th Street. So in that images number 1 and 2, you see the Coca-Cola building. Image number 3 is actually a building that fronts to Main Street and is technically in the Main Street ADC, but this particular side of it is what faces onto 10th Street and feels like it's more in the realm of the building that we're proposing, and so might be a precedent for what it is we want to do. We're unsure. The other 4 images that you see are some of the multifamily housing that's in our vicinity in the Wurtland district. And again, it's a little bit of everything. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned before, the CX8 zone, we are again proposing 6 stories, even though 11 stories would be permitted. There is no density limit for us on this site. There is no building coverage limit for us on this site, although we are required to have 10% outdoor amenity space. Next slide, please. And so this is showing you what is permissible under the current zoning code. Again, the 11 stories. And if you'll go to the next slide, this is what we are proposing. So this would, due to the existing topography, this would give you 6 stories facing 10th Street. We're proposing that that top story would step back approximately 10 feet. And then because of the topography going up Wurtland, by the time you get to the far right corner, which is up near Stacy Hall, it would be 5 stories. And again, with that top story stepping back. Next slide, please. Oh, and I should mention, we are assuming that facing 10th Street, we would have a series of retail bays as well as a garage entrance. The garage would be at grade, but behind the retail on 10th Street, but it would be below grade once you're to the higher portion on Wurtland. And then the balance of the building would be residential spaces with an interior courtyard. We're assuming somewhere between 150 and 190 affordable rental units. And that large range is largely driven by wanting to work with community stakeholders to understand the types of residential units these should be, whether they're more geared towards single individuals or families. And we haven't had those conversations yet, so we don't really know yet. All right, and we're looking at somewhere on the order of 80 to 90 parking spaces that we should be able to fit in the parking garage. Next slide, please. And so this is, we put some windows and modulation in this just to give you an idea of what this might look like, but by no means should you assume this is a design. It's just to give you an idea. So I have 3 very specific questions that I'd like to ask you all to consider when you are deliberating. So although we are located in the West Main ADC, should precedents from the Wurtland ADC or the Coca-Cola building be considered equal to or stronger influences than our ADC designation? Second question. What historical cues or architectural principles found in the surrounding ADCs and neighborhood do you see as most critical to the design and development of this site? And my third question, are you able to identify any exemplary pedestrian experiences in the surrounding area that should be considered as precedents for this site? Both retail and multifamily residential examples are helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This is preliminary discussion,
I
so
can-
it's all at it. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is great and exciting to see something happening in this location. I think it's a really good spot, and I thought we had got a good amount of information, and I feel I'll just start by saying I think the massing makes some sense. In some ways, I'm wondering if we know why not go higher, but I'll try to gear my question, my kind of, especially that first question, because I think this is an interesting property that is right in between three districts, and I don't know that it, like the way that the guidelines are written, it's not that you're really taking elements or details. I think really for me it's more of a question of probably material and scale. And there are a couple of guidances that we have. This would essentially fall in what our guidelines call the neighborhood transitional, where it says commercial office buildings are located on sites that adjoin residential areas, and the design of these buildings should attempt to relate to the character of adjacent residential neighborhood as well as the commercial area. These buildings may be larger in scale than residential structures. Their materials, roof forms, massing, and window patterns should relate to residential forms. And it suggests West Main Street is one area where this happens. Also, I think in the multi-lot, it talks about trying to relate to. In this case, there's not a lot to relate directly to, but those houses across the street on Wurtland, they are lifted up. It would be pretty interesting and maybe helpful to know the relationship to them, so they're not looking at what the height differences are. They're set back quite a bit, so I imagine they're not getting like totally shaded out, but they will impact those structures. It will impact the Coca-Cola building. I'm not very concerned about them, but I think just using your skills as designers to, relate, this is a building that straddles, whether we had guidelines or not, here's still a building that's straddling the commercial condition on Main Street with the residential neighborhood to the north.
I think there's a real opportunity here to improve this intersection and this, it's pretty ragged right now. And in my mind, I think it looks like your inclination is to look at the Coke building for some inspiration, and I think that's actually a really good way of going here. I'm glad that you're not going 11 stories. I think that's wonderful that it's going to be 6. But to me, the fenestration and the massing of the Coke building and the buildings up the hill too, some of the one on the left that you'd shown earlier, I think it's really important that you make this a nice pedestrian experience. It isn't right now. And it's sort of hard to tell how landscaping would work here as far as setbacks, but I think having the trees there is huge.
Yeah, the current CX zone says that we need to be 0 to 10 feet back from the lot line.
Right,
which is tight.
Really tight, and then it's sort of what we were talking about earlier, it's kind of in conflict with some of the other aspirations for that we'd like to see in these buildings. But, is there any way around that?
Yeah, no, actually, it's not in conflict. The streetscape requirements set your actual, they don't set your property line, but they set where your setbacks start from.
Yep.
So if it requires, I forget what it's, downtown, it's I think a 6-foot tree zone and 8-foot walking zone. And then your setback would start from that. So that becomes a public easement. Any part that doesn't fit on your property would then become a public easement that then your building would be able to set back further if you wanted to. So that should allow you to fit street trees, and if you wanted to have further vegetation or something there, should allow you to get that. Sorry, Roger, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's
Okay.
exactly, that would be wonderful if you were able to have street trees.
I have some questions. I don't want to jump ahead of anyone, but
Yeah, I wonder, are we asking questions or do we? I guess it's free for all. It's
Yeah.
preliminary.
Well, they also asked us, we have to remember to answer their questions.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the first, and I'm gonna kind of try and, you rattle them off quickly, so let us know if I get it right or wrong. Well, the first was, we're in the West Main ADC, and in essence, how much should the Wortland ADC factor into it, and how much should the Koch building factor into it? I think Breck has spoken really well to that point already, and Roger. I think, personally, I think this, like, it wants to be more part of West Main because of the massing and size of some of the buildings up there, but we need to respect the fact that there's a much more residential neighborhood behind it. And I think from like a materiality standpoint and maybe fenestration, the Koch building's a really good thing to look to. So, like, yeah, you do have to figure out how to bring them all three together, and that's the challenge. But I don't think we need y'all to make it look like a Victorian house, right?
Yeah.
Nor maybe the Sears building,
Yeah.
Stacy Hall.
Stacey Hall.
Yes.
Or the standard.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, so that kind of is a good lead into the next question, which is like, I think, are there precedents within the district that you want us to point you to, or that are maybe good examples of design? There's probably a range of opinions on that. I think the standard's one that's
Could be better if something was
gotten a
actually
lot
in
of
there.
attention. I'll just say it that way. Does any, and I'm more of a historian and classical architecture fan, so I'm going to ask my colleagues to give some tips on what are some good examples of some of these larger scale housing complexes.
I provided for the Verve and for the 2117 Ivy, and I can pull it up, a collage, if you will, of architecture throughout the city, and essentially offering that, you know, there is no typical. And in fact, there's been some really unique stuff. You go over to the University Hospital and, you know, the glass on the facades, so there is no, and I was sort of anticipating the question on that one of, oh, well, shouldn't this look like what Charlottesville looks like? And then the question would be, well, what is that? So you've struggled with that, or we've struggled with that on a number of things. I think I would offer that a similar path to follow would be in the discussions at 600 and 612 West Main, that idea of the continuous, to break up the facade somehow, to have that permeability, and I know that the word that legal was had trouble with, but the permeability of the building, what are the lengths of it? Does it need to be a continuous, you know, does this need to appear a single building, or can it have different appearances to it? So just reflecting back on those earlier discussions, if they're helpful. And I said I can pull up those images if they're helpful.
Can I speak to this? It's an excellent question, and it is so kind of ironic that Charlottesville has one of the best examples of pedestrian urban experience, and then the most, we could be careful here, the way that West Main has been treated, and I think because of the plan that was batted around for a long time and then never happened, essentially there has been almost zero design of the pedestrian environment along West Main, and so there's not very many good examples in the rest of Charlottesville. This leads me to, and I say that because it's a really good question, and it's actually really, it's imperative for this project. This segment of the street, of this street that we're looking at right there in the image, is a really critical corridor for Charlottesville, not just like from a transportation, but from a, like, what Charlottesville is as a city. That road cuts across all socioeconomic lines, and it's for the goals of your clients, for the city to continue to function better. Having this be a really excellent example of a good pedestrian environment. I think is almost as important of anything we would review. It's making that really feel like a good, strong pedestrian connection.
So I have, if I can follow that just a little bit, one thing that jumped out at me, I'm assuming y'all are gonna have, maybe it's a bad assumption. Do y'all have like a traffic engineer as part of your team? Okay, great. Because I noticed you had the vehicular entrance off 10th Street. I know right now Wurtland is sort of more pedestrian, but 10th Street is also very busy from a traffic standpoint.
Yes, it is.
And I worry that having the vehicular entrance off 10th is just gonna cause a lot of traffic jams.
It usually looks like that.
Right. It's because it goes up a hill to a stoplight. And that's a short light. But, basically, I really think you might want to consider parking access off Wurtland.
We have certainly considered it.
Possibly even 10th and a half Street, or
Why
something
not
like
10th
that.
and a half Street?
Yeah.
Because it's 20 feet higher than the site.
Oh well.
And I will also, you've already, you know this, but those two buildings on 10th and a half Street are quite historic. One of them's, I think, very old. So, it is what it is. I wonder if you could almost, it's not your property. Maybe this will lend itself to 10th and a half becoming more of a pedestrian pathway or something. I don't know, but that's not on your project. And then, I guess, Brett kind of touched, the third question was about the pedestrian experience, so, I think Jeff can lend you some of his advice. On Main Street, I think the Draftsman looks nice.
I do too. Yeah.
There's a vocabulary of broken up massing, flat roofs, and glass. Seems to be pretty common. But I'll jump in with some other stuff.
Yeah, I had some questions actually, just to kind of go backwards a little bit. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the choices that you made with the general massing. Why 6 stories? Why a donut? I think I know the answers, but it just would be nice to hear kind of the.
Yeah, so right now we're assuming that just based on very, very preliminary financial investigation, that a podium, a concrete podium with wood construction on top is going to be the most feasible to actually fund the project and have it move forward. And so the donut shape is really looking at trying to maximize the goals that the university has for getting as many units as possible on the site, while still making it financially feasible to build. We have looked at some other forms, but this is where we are right now.
Okay.
And is there any of that you want to speak to?
Just that for affordable multifamily housing, a double-loaded corridor does give some efficiency just in terms of operating and the resident experience and what the site is giving us, or the size and the topography.
I would imagine that creating a courtyard would be a wonderful thing for the folks that live there and their kids especially. It's this nice, safe environment in the middle of the city.
Yeah, I agree.
That makes sense. So where you guys are currently thinking of public versus private exposures on this building, am I understanding correctly that 10th is, you had mentioned retail, is that where that's going? So it'd be more residential windows and whatnot facing Wurtland? Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, I guess that was my general question, just to try and make sure I did understand. Is it does seem like a little bit of a shame. I understand the financial reasons for the donut. It does feel like it's walled itself off a little bit, and you have. I guess it does make a very safe public space for the residents, which is great, and that you should be most concerned about the residents. It's not very welcoming to the neighborhood, but maybe that's, again, I realize your goal should be for the people living there. So I don't know if there's it's a comment. It does feel a little bit fortress-like, because it's big. It is a very big footprint, as big as some of our other very large projects on West Main Street. So it's, the challenge for you guys will be to find a way to not make it feel like it's a 1 block long wall that's 6 stories tall.
Right, and I think a lot of that is, you're feeling that because it is a massing model right
Mhm.
now, and it does not have depth and modulation yet.
I will caution you, though, that I we pick on the standard all the time, and it's my favorite one to pick on, because on paper, it looked really good, and it doesn't work at all. There's for so many different reasons that are, some of it I can't quite understand, but it just does not work at all. I think part of it has to do with the streetscape, and I do think that, like the view that we had on the screen a second ago, I think you need to pull the trees out to the edge of the side, to the curb, and have the sidewalk inset.
So, yeah, we'll be working with the utility department to figure out how to make that possible.
Okay. Shoot, because they definitely, you can get bigger trees out there, and you don't have power lines, so it would be.
Yeah, but we do have
have
storm
underground
there right
stuff.
now.
Okay. Town Public Works. But, and similarly on Wortland Street, I think that would be a point where the further back you could pull back, probably the better. I mean, it's gonna be a big building, you're never gonna be, there's no sense in trying to imitate the houses. It's a big building, so treat it like a big building. But at the same time, Wortland it has front yards, so if there's a little bit of space to put some more vegetation in there, I think that would go a long way in making it feel more cohesive with that street. Let's see, some of your questions were, yeah, so the precedent, I mean, Wortland isn't a precedent, but it is something to respect, at least in my opinion. So, I mean, you've got a big building, it's gonna be a big building. Don't try and fake it as we have had applicants that have peppered a big building with little houses before, and I don't think you guys are gonna do that. I mean, it doesn't sound like Grimm and Parker, but just don't do that. Yeah, and to echo some okay pedestrian experiences on West Main, actually not bad ones, are, again, yeah, the Draftsman isn't bad. Battle Building would be nice if they actually had a use to that big open area, and there was actually something in those retail spaces. But again, that's pulling your building further back in. I don't know how much wiggle room you've got. I mean, I'm assuming this is really preliminary, but if you guys are gonna tell me that you need every square inch, that might be problematic. It'd be nice if you could provide that streetscape. That's my ramble. I'm sorry. I think it went on a little long.
Yeah. Do you
I totally agree with what everybody has said so far. I agree with Carl's point in the nature of it being almost fortress-like as a big donut. And I'd actually point to, I mean, not a particular building, but I mean, I just love East West Main. I mean, I think I would point to the pedestrian experience of just the street, and what I love about it is the variety, of the kind of experience of the structures and the architecture in the building. But maybe more so, what I like are all the nooks and crannies, the experience and the curiosity of walking down the different, some are alleyways, some are different, streets. And the fact that they lead somewhere, maybe not someplace particularly grand, but that they lead through, it's this idea of porousness versus a solid block, something impenetrable. And I think, just to bring up the easy example, the Standard, has a variety of materials in the front, but it is what it is. It's a wall, right? I mean, in some ways, the materiality just is a bit of a false nod to trying to break up the mass, but you feel that wall there. There's no place to explore. There's no place to sort of invite the public in, you know, and there's no, maybe more importantly is just there's no curiosity that makes you want to like explore and go around the next corner. So I think everybody's pretty eloquently brought up the fact that as much as you can enhance the pedestrian experience of 10th Street, do that. You know, if there's setback rules that sort of can you can bend and push back and create maybe more than just a sidewalk. Even maybe it's a real kind of a garden or a walking experience that happens there. It'd be wonderful. You know, it would honor the Coca-Cola building across the street. I agree with the comments about the driving the parking lot entrance off of there. That could kind of destroy that experience of walking up and down that street. To answer your question about what would inspire this, I sort of see the West Main, the good part of West Main, the part that we all kind of respond to, as an inspiration for that. And to take that a step further, is there a way to create more porousness? I mean, is there an opportunity to sort of break up the donut to maybe create that safe space, but also create porousness that brings people from that other part of West Main down 10th and a half, or some other path to Wortland. I like the idea of somebody brought up the idea that this is sort of a location that straddles three different areas, three different zones, and maybe you take that idea of this thing straddling as an inspiration. That could be a kind of a symbol or a key into what maybe drives the form of this. Sort of show us that there's a way to do this that's not the fortress that we've all kind of we're all kind of balking up against. And I don't see any way to better honor kind of the transition from a residential to a dense commercial, which is what we're kind of getting into pretty hardcore in this city, than finding this kind of symbolic gesture. Breck's right, this is a really important location for a lot of reasons. And if, I see it, if you can find a really elegant solution to sort of tie these two different locations, residential to dense Main Street, to increase pedestrian circulation and make it a place that people want to walk to and want to explore, then you're really you're hitting the nail on the head, I think.
Something you said. Oh, sorry, you haven't spoken yet. Something you said, David, about the kind of porosity and sort of individual character. Maybe the corner has some decent precedent where it has a fairly consistent street wall, but there are a number of businesses that have carved out space on the interior, or they open up quite a bit, and actually, so that feeling of public nature of those conditions, it's much deeper. In fact, I love when it was what was it, Qdoba or something? Now it's the bank. They filled it in, but there was that really deep kind of like porch that was behind the facade. It does some of that. This also happens on in the little courtyards and Eloise and Oyster Bar and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
I'm not an architect, but one of the ways, I understand the interest in porosity, and just two ideas I might throw out. Maybe, and it's not one of my favorite buildings, but to a certain extent, I think the Code building downtown works with regard to porosity. People can walk, there's a plaza, there's something there. I don't know if that would fit your design at all. Just a suggestion to look at. And just off the top of my head, I don't know how this buildings work again, but it's possible for the retail space. Would it be possible, for example, to recess them a little bit and create courtyards for that kind of feeling, again, and more green space and so forth. Just some thoughts. Along 10th Street, not Wordland.
Yeah, I did have one thought on Wordland with, and I don't know if this makes sense, but if you give that facade a more residential feel with like small porches or things like that, entering onto apartments, that would really engage the sidewalk and make people want to hang out outside, like in front of the building, might get a more like personal connection. And then you turn the corner and it is much more kind of commercial, starts to make you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm going up to the West Main District. Might be a way to kind of, yeah, straddle or turn the corner.
I don't know how you get a turn in, given our comments on the traffic on 10th Street. I mean, that's beyond my pay grade. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I would think from a design point of view that you might be forced, but it might be a design opportunity to kind of create, for lack of a better word, a drop-off lane or a valet parking lane that would, on the far side, include the entrance into your parking, but be a place where Ubers could pick residents up, or somebody could meet somebody and pick them up. Because otherwise, you really, I mean, I don't know how, if I had a friend in the building and I wanted to pick them up on the condition that the street is right now, you can't stop on 10th Street. There's no way. And I don't even think you can turn very easily without being back-ended anyway. So maybe there's an opportunity there to create, along with that vehicular entrance, more of a pedestrian entrance, a people entrance too. And an opportunity there to maybe recess the building or do something, you know, in the setback space or whatever. That could, I mean, and we haven't seen anything but just massing and what the density is and everything. I know that's all, we'll see the articulation and fenestration and all that later, but yeah, it could be an opportunity to create, to say this is a pedestrian people building. Yeah, and where do you enter? You know, if somebody has a friend, you know, if a friend down at West Haven wants to visit someone in this building, you know, they would walk up 10th, and where's the entrance? I mean, anyway. I don't have a whole lot of other comments. I wanted to echo what everybody else said. I think if I tried to answer your questions, I would just be duplicating what my colleagues have said. I do want to ask you whether you've read, I have a question for you, have you read our design guidelines?
The BAR?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Okay, because chapter 3, of course, is on new construction, and we don't get, like we're saying, we don't get brand-new opportunities for new construction here. And some of these, we're in a very long process with a very long runway of revising these guidelines, but they won't be revised anytime soon. Some are might just fly in the face of the new zoning ordinance, and you would know that by reading it, and we would know that too. But there might be a lot of guidelines in chapter 3 for you on how we build new construction in the city, which, like we said, doesn't happen all that often. It's a great opportunity. So I just want to thank you for your time and for bringing your questions to us.
Great.
Did we do a good job of answering your questions? Or do you want to
I think so.
dig into any more deeper?
Her voice went up. It doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
You gave us a lot to think about, which is good.
Okay.
Which is good.
One more comment, because we've been talking a little bit about the transition from sort of residential Wordland to something else. And I've been spending a lot of time in Boston recently, and there are a lot of examples where, you know, like off of Beacon Street, where there are, you know, amazing single-family houses, estates that are much grander than anything on Wordland. And it marches right up, and then you get to a beautiful apartment building that's right on the corner. And it's unapologetic as an apartment building, and it's beautiful, and can have all the sort of variations that we're talking about without getting sort of pastiche-y with like, oh, now we're on the residential face, and now we're on the streetscape, the trolley side. So.
Yeah, one doesn't cancel out the other,
No,
I feel like, you know. The crime is when the whole block gets like 3 blocks get taken up, so you can't experience it, right? It's just, there's no sense, there's no way to engage it. And maybe a good exercise would just to be like to take the whole West Main and study it, like study the different sections of it and why some are successful and some aren't. Even if you just did like a figure ground of like the pathways, the streets and the circulation patterns and go and look at the experience of one section of West Main and compare it to another section, I think you pretty quickly see sort of the areas that engage, pedestrian and the ones that repel it.
Ready.
Can I offer just a couple observations that might help, or I hope help? One, the guidelines do recommend, they do not encourage EFS. We're seeing a lot more of that. We are certainly seeing at the Verve project, which is huge. It's almost entirely EFS. I was sort of in an unfortunate position of asked where I stand on EFS by the ERB. And I, and with Mr. Schwartz sort of adding his knowledge as well, we know that it's changed, we know the materials changed, but it still comes down to the installation of it, and there are a lot of questions. I would have to say that after those discussions, if something comes in with proposing EFS, I'm going to strongly point out that it's discouraged in our guidelines. There just were a lot of questions raised, and I wasn't able to answer them. So I think the materiality, I know it might be early on here, but I just want to offer that thought. The other thing is, in looking at some of the materials that we've seen in other buildings on West Main and around town, we've seen a lot of new materials come in, and the Draftsman being one of them. I say this as a former builder. Some of these new materials are, they're really interesting. We've seen some of these metal panels that snap together. Carl can probably, expound on what they're looking at the Verve. I think there's something to be said about just a masonry building. You can, 20 years from now, I'm worried that buildings like some of these new materials, you're not going to find tradesmen that know how to fix it. So I think it's important maybe to go back to our roots a little bit in some of the materials. So just offering a perspective on some of what's come up. The second, I would offer caution on, I know every building wants to be mixed use and have commercial space and retail space. I get a lot of calls from people on some of the buildings that have been improved on West Main. They don't know what to do with the empty retail. I get asked, can we put an art exhibit in, or can we put art panels? Can we do something so that it doesn't look like an empty space? So I would encourage designing those with some flexibility in mind, because every building in this city cannot have a coffee shop downstairs. It may well be that's an apartment. So I think to design for that flexibility so you don't end up with a space that you don't know what to do with. The second or the third piece, I do think topography is an interesting piece of this site. I tried to look at it a little bit, but it really does drop, and it's to the advantage of that height. It's almost, when we were looking at the Market Central building, the way that Water Street drops down. So you can take advantage of that, although that's going to there's some complications with that. But it would be good to show that and see what it could be doing with it. I think vehicular entrances, and I again go to some projects that you all have looked at and some that the Planning Commission have looked at. A success at 2005 JPA was getting that entrance on the side. That was an entrance corridor. At Wharton Street, that Design Develop brought in, I think, a year or two ago, really didn't have much of an option, had to have that entrance onto Wurtland. The guidelines do address that, and I think, I think personally from a traffic situation, I know that road there, it's going to be difficult if there's right-hand, left-hand coming in and out of a garage there, so Wurtland makes sense. But within your guidelines, it does allow, looking at to try to keep those vehicular entrances, off of the primary entrance or primary facade. And then the last is, everyone will indulge me for a second, because I want to make this clear to you all and to you all. And let me find how to share my screen. Okay, so if you'll apologize, nope, that's not it. I want this. You share. Yep, here. So, it comes down to this sketch here, and I'm not saying there's any right or wrong in it, but I've sat through, every Wednesday we have a pre-development or a pre-submittal discussion. Applicants have come in and presented, and everyone that might be involved in neighborhood development, engineering, utilities is involved. And the thing that continues to be a sticking point is the tree canopy. And the zoning for this requires 10% tree canopy. And I'm learning a lot about tree canopy. In fact, I'm going to talk about it in one of my questions for you all. But let's assume and it's a tree, the calculation is at a 10-year-old tree, and the tree list has those in it. In talking with my colleagues, so here's the building, sidewalk, let's say that's the property line. The tree canopy can be inside the public right-of-way as long as the tree's on the property. So let's say a 60-foot canopy, and a little more than half is on the property and slightly less than half is out. You're still with a 60-foot tree canopy. That's not going to fit on an 8-foot sidewalk. And I'm not saying we solve it here. I'm not saying, we have to figure it out here. But I think this is the discussion that I'm going to be pushing internally is kind of what's the point of requiring a 60-foot tree, the diameter of that tree if you lop this side off to not hit the building, and, then out here they lop this side off to avoid power lines and overhead utilities. So this is something we're going to have to solve internally. And I don't know, maybe some of it can be solved in the courtyard with the tree canopy, but this is following up on some of the discussion we had about 218 West Market Street last month. And there was no space left for trees, and in a corresponding discussion about, well, where did the trees go? I think that's being missed. And one of the answers, we know that the setbacks can be up to the street, but then the next page, you have to follow those tree cover requirements. And so I think it really need to solve this, and I don't know how, and I don't know how you all do, but I don't know how you fit, and 10% of this site would be 8,300 square feet of tree cover. That's a lot of trees to fit onto this site if you're pushing everything up to the sidewalk. And Carl, I certainly welcome any corrections you might have from the zoning.
Simmering over here.
So I'm not trying to throw any water on anything. I just really, that's just the one thing that I feel like in the preliminary discussions we've had and that will be coming up, that this is, we're not
I think
burrowing
it's
into this
that
enough.
applicants are not realizing that their
Correct.
setbacks start after they provide the streetscape.
Correct.
So applicants come in and they want to fill their entire property, and our zoning code clearly says, no, you can't do that. You have to provide trees first.
Correct.
And so it's just applicants have to get it through their head.
So,
And it is understood, and the planners are making that very clear when questions are coming up.
Okay. Well then,
Yeah, I worry that this is that where the design, we get down the road and we're gonna have to coordinate these better. I'm washing my laundry in front of you all, but I think hopefully it's helpful to hear, I mean, hopefully at least some of the other things
We've
were.
heard that these applicants are aware of it,
Yeah.
so maybe we can let them go.
Yeah.
So they don't have to listen to our
It's
angst.
a challenge we've discussed as we've had our meetings with the city, departments. It's a challenge. And we don't have a solution yet, but we're working with our landscape architect to respond to all the constraints.
If it makes any, I don't know if this, maybe others disagree, but for me on this site, the more important connection and linkage is north to south, actually not along Wurtland. I just don't think that's as critical of a pedestrian linkage, and so these things may be intertwined in terms of like where you choose to put tree canopy. I think that's just even in terms of relating to residential scale. I think as a citizen of Charlottesville, I think it's more important going from Main Street to all of the neighborhoods north of Main Street rather than east-west along Wurtland and those historic, kind of very piecemeal historic district.
Thank you for letting me bring you to my petri dish, because we have some policy things that I'm going to be discussing later with the BAR, and it's helpful to have you offer comment on what I just offered too. So I apologize for being long-winded, but there is purpose behind it, and thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, that concludes the meeting. If you want to take a break, anybody? I did want to say, I think Remy's been bumped up the food chain, so will you be continuing to do BAR? Okay. No, you were going up to the city council, and I didn't know if we were going to lose you.
I'm good.
Okay.
but
All right.
It must be like 6
Yeah.
degrees in here.
Okay.
I'm so uncomfortable.
No.
So,
Finally got comfortable.
I know.
So
I was thinking about
all of this will come together when they come back, and I'll,
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
I'm afraid to.
Yeah,
I was just
he
looking
has-
at that.
He has
yeah.
that queued up here.
I mean, it seems like pretty reasonable like destination for
Yeah,
that.
well, the same architect. I was, Jeff, when you were talking about EFS, like, so I'm not sure what material, we can't tell them to do an entirely brick building, because I feel like
No.
no one can afford that. Personally, I still prefer EFS to the fiber cement board and batten stuff that we see. Like the back of the flats and the back of the standard, I mean, it's just done. I mean, I don't know if it's craftsmanship or what, but it's everything's wonky and crooked and collects dust and dirt, and it just looks awful.
some of it is framing. It was interesting, a guy at Cincinnati was talking, he was using the framing carpenter as a sort of analogy metaphor for a project. But I know, as from my builder days, a good framing carpenter drives everything, and a bad framing carpenter can make the rest of the project miserable because they haven't, their walls aren't straight, square, level, plumb. So I think that might be, it's the mechanics and what's accepted. But I do think that we're entering we're seeing some really interesting new materials if they're done right. But at the same time, I still don't know if they, how will they stand the test of time? Because you can't, someone will come in and say, well, they don't make that anymore. Now, we know they make bricks, when they wood siding, make, aluminum siding, but there are some of these really precise, tiles and things that I'm worried we won't be able to replicate or repair in the future. All right, so just.
Well, that's for another VAR to worry about.
I know, that's right, I know. We're gonna,
I said we
it's
should
silly,
adjourn
we're gonna
this
cook
meeting
the
and go
planet.
Get dinner.
So,
Can't we do that?
yeah, I'm sorry, but the reason I introduced
We could recess this meeting and
this.
say we're going to.
Well, we've got,
Look at all of us eating.
I know, that's fine.
Stuff.
We have some policy things to discuss, and I said I can't resolve it tonight, but I think that one of the things I want to work for and draft is that when things are brought in to us, I've never, in the past, I haven't hesitated to bring you something in whatever form, because I figure that conversation's good. You all are professionals, you know how to guide, you know. But I think that I need to, like, to me, when something goes to the planning commission, I always tell people, get your site plan squared away, because there's no use going to them with the design until you've determined that it can go there, and it will fit there. I haven't done that with you all, but I think I need to. And I, you know, for example, this project to say, you know, make sure that, you know, where you're showing that wall is where that wall will go. Same thing, you know, and you are going to be getting some preliminary discussions coming in, and we can have a discussion more, but I need to draft a policy about this, and because I just, I worry that you all are looking at something that's, you know, it's we're gonna find out it's gotta be pushed back further, it can't be this tall or that tall, or the trees have to go here or there, and, or that you can't put trees there at all because that's where the sewer line goes. So, I'm gonna tinker with something, and I know we've got a lot on our plates, but I just, it's, or are you all okay? Give this some thought, or, hey, you know, you okay seeing it as early as possible? So that was the reason I sort of wanted to bring that, introduce that here. Okay, let me go find my agenda, my notes. I threw it on the floor.
I think it's, I think for a project of that scale,
I'm sorry, say.
sorry, I was stop eating. I think for a project of that scale, I think it's appropriate that we meet. It's okay that we meet 6-7 times with an applicant
Yeah.
on a complex project. I would rather meet more frequently than less, and I know it represents a lot of design work to get to that site plan level, and sometimes that's too late.
The criticism you know, internally is that, and I don't think my colleagues realize that, you know, you all weren't doing preliminary discussions just out of, you know, curiosity and, you know, your willingness to spend time with applicants. It's because they're required. So the critique came back, well, how much time am I spending preparing a staff report or evaluating something? And that's a fair question, at least certainly in the last 5 months. But it's it's again, something we can, maybe there are parameters that we establish and say, you know, you want a preliminary discussion, at least have this ready. Yeah, and because it does take time. I do have to go through and I mean, even for this, which I didn't get to the type of review I normally do, it's 8 to 10 hours per submittal, just getting all the things ready. So if I don't have to do something, a preliminary discussion, I know, you know, it used to be like, here it is, what do you all think? But I think it helps to have things up front. I agree with Brack. I think, you know, we could have a couple preliminary discussions. There's a, you know, a fine line at which point you say, all right, I need to make this, you need to formalize this and let people know. But
Can I just ask, because there are professionals in the room that know more than I do, so not to pick on this applicant, but we just heard this, and it's a big project. Would members of this board want, theoretically, for this applicant to have brought more to us? Or was this, you know, coupled with, like, the Market Street, that was a big project that we saw at last meeting. Was it just enough to bring the massing and kind of say, we want to go up this many stories, here are the neighborhood conditions? They obviously had, you know, what district should we engage with? But, I mean, I just, was this enough? I mean, we got like a donut as far as the, I mean, we got height, we got setback, we know, we don't have any dimensions on the court, you know, on the courtyard, but
We want
we
to
get
put
it.
a mural, we just don't know what yet. You want to build a building.
Well, that,
Well, I think,
I figured I wouldn't talk about that. That one.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
it's a similar.
It is, and I just wonder if design professionals would say, in an ideal situation, and say our docket was much busier like we used to be, which we, you know, we will be, hopefully, would we require more of them? And not to pick on them at all, I'm just saying, would it be ideal if, at a preliminary discussion, they did have elevations for us, or,
I thought it was just right.
okay,
Because if they had gone, I mean, if they had gone further, we would have had less influence or ability to change it. It was the most important thing on the agenda tonight, and we didn't spend that much more than the other projects.
well, I'm not complaining about it, but then what would we want is, like, I would love if we could develop like a critical path for big projects like this. Like, what would we want to see next time? You know, right, exactly. And I don't know what
That might be
those are.
that might be a good suggestion. Is like several milestones that might be useful.
And maybe you don't say the first meeting, second meeting,
Yeah.
you don't say how many times will come back to us, but at some point, if you've agreed on this, then here are the things that you're working on. And it seems like I don't have that language, but
We actually had, Robert Watkins prepared a very good outline that, when we were having that discussion, 4 years ago, about how to go about this. The most difficult part is having that the applicant's willing to go on the process with us and not say, no, I want you to vote up or down. And there's always that risk that someone say, tough, vote it down, I'll go to council and appeal, even if the drawings aren't finished. But it's establishing that trust, and we currently have it. I mean, I guess Jeff Levine's been our test money, but, he's been very willing. But I'm also, and Cheryl,
I would actually differ. I wasn't around for Blue Moon, but the building that is yet to be
Right.
built on West Main, I felt like we sat through that too many meetings. I felt I didn't understand why things were coming back to us, and then I suspected, and it was true, that they were changing the materiality, which was a big regret of a lot of ours that was on the board at that point. And I did feel like that could have been, we should have voted earlier on that. And I'm a big believer in the deliberative process, but I'm also really freezing right now, guys. That's why my voice is troubling. I'm really cold. I don't know how I don't know. Is it 55 degrees in this room or what?
It's cold.
I'm really shivering. That's why my voice is trembling. I'm trying
Going
to
back to
participate, but-
last meeting at the hotel project on Market Street, I didn't find that conversation very productive at all. That they didn't have a site plan with context of like the real buildings next to it. Like
Right.
they wanted to talk about massing in the building, and I think they got a little bit out of it, but
Which project?
The hotel and,
it was a very preliminary discussion,
market.
and they focused more on like the interior layout of the floor
the
plates and
architecture.
didn't have much to really give feedback on yet.
I think what we're seeing, and this probably especially with the new zoning code, is that it's, developers aren't sure what they can do. Like, they see that the zoning code allows so much, and then they're like, oh, well, wait, there's the BAR, and they're probably not gonna want us to do that much. So it becomes like a go, no-go. Do I hire the architect to do full designs or even schematic design? I mean, that's a big investment, and I think that's just what we're seeing right now. But no, I do agree though. Yeah, there should have been some more last week, at least with context.
I'm a bit puzzled, so we can override the zoning code?
No.
Okay.
No, but we can tell them to make the building smaller.
We can.
You can
By
vote, and
a
then they
certain
can
amount,
appeal
yes.
if they wish. So,
Okay.
and again, be very clear, you all do not have the final say. All decisions are appealable, right? But for sake of argument, it's best, yes, the BAR would say, make it taller, shorter, skinny, or whatever.
I agree that well, certainly the conversations are easier when there's more information. But that being said, I still think there's a lot of assumptions about what we will or will not say. So I think it's helpful to have them out in a public meeting and have the chance to talk about what's important for a certain project. It also gets it in our head as we are driving around town and thinking about certain places. I will certainly be, look at 10th Street a little differently now. And it gets it in the public realm earlier. So even though I certainly understand why, the conversation's a little trickier with this early massing, I think it would be helpful to have better context. That's one takeaway for me, is that if we're going to be discussing massing, we really need to understand it in relationship to the existing context. Even if the design work hasn't been done, I think that's an easy ask.
I think this conversation was appropriate. I think much more than that would have been going a little bit ahead of us. It's almost like we could have a conversation without any visuals. It's like, here's the site, here's the context. Let's talk about what you all think ought to happen here. And I know that's sort of the other extreme, but I feel like that was fine for me, at least.
I don't know how to answer the question of height. We have some things coming. There's a lot of lanes right now of things happening. And some of the inquiries are, well, if something comes in with the bonus, meet all the bonus provisions, how dare the BAR tell us? It needs to be, it can't be that tall. Again, the one thing I remind everyone is the BAR doesn't have final, but I think some from the other direction of, all right, well, this is what we can ask council, and this is what we can do with the guidelines. Is that a given? If the given is that, then say that. Then treat it as such in the guidelines, so that both the BAR and the applicants know. And it's that eliminating the unknown. Breck, you just referred to it. That what is the BAR going to do? That's what I'm getting a lot of questions about internally. How can your guidelines be not a how it must be designed, but at least predictable, so that and I think given height, we don't have an answer right now, but that's where we're heading.
The point of us even being a board, and the fact that we don't have just a pictorial design guide for the city, is that everything is context-based. I mean, that's why we have to be here. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be necessary. So whoever at the city is having an issue with this, I think just needs to understand the fact that what we do is context-based, and that's why the city at some point created us.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to get rid of us, they can get rid of us, but I feel like we do serve a purpose, and you can't, there's no prescriptive, these neighborhoods you can go up to 8 stories, and these neighborhoods you can only go up to 6, and these 4. We'll never be able to do that.
Can I borrow anybody's Dell power and then wrap you all up? Let's see. You're welcome to adjourn if you wish. Thanks.
Is it gonna be the same one?
Now we see who has the power.
Yeah, you got the power. Let's see. All right. You all, it's what I tell, kids when they're saying, oh, I'm being recruited, or this coach is looking at me, and I'm like, they're not looking at what you think they are. And your conversations are really helpful, and sometimes it may not, sound like it, but I hear things that are extremely helpful, and they're helping me internally as we go back into this, as we continue with the this whole discussion about the ordinance. I guess the thing I would say is I hate being out on an island. One of the people we interviewed the other day was, asking me, like, what's the, the collaboration with, everybody in NDS, and I said, well, we collaborate, but the truth is, we're, the design and preservation, we're doing what we do, and everybody else is like, yeah, I'm not sure what they do back there. So you all are you're my mentors, you're my advisors, and I appreciate when you take the time to help me out. All right, let's see if I can get to this, what I wanted to show you and ask about. I hate technology. All right. I want to skip. What did you do while you were away? What did you do during your excuse? All right.
I was sitting right there.
Oh, you, I didn't even notice.
Who's this?
I'm glad you're back, James. I broke protocol a couple times, tried to skip over public comments last time. Oops.
Okay, why is it not?
Should at least
Wrong.
give them the chance if they are out there.
Remy, did we even have any public online tonight?
No,
Okay.
we did not.
I think I'm bored.
I would have thought there had been some interest in this last project.
What kind of pizza are they eating this time?
What? Okay.
Breck, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, I was just surprised that there wasn't any public for that last meeting, the last applicant.
I mean,
I
it's,
meant to put that
oh,
on
sorry.
your Facebook page and I completely forgot.
Hmm.
Not good on my-
Am I logged out? Is there am I still on the machine, Remy? No, I'm not.
Can we
Very
talk
soon.
about barbecue?
Please,
Um,
I'm just gonna go out of this and come back in again.
All right, so y'all are not here, you're not here for June meeting.
Correct, Breck isn't either.
Brett's not either. So we should look,
It should be July, because then we can send off Tyler.
yeah, you're here till the end of July?
Yeah. I don't have an exact date yet, but we'll be here in July.
So we're looking at July.
Breck, what are the dates that you're away in June?
10th through the 24th.
I'm about the same.
All right, so the BAR meeting
You're not
is
gonna tell me,
July
so you're just gonna
16th.
check your calendar? You don't like socializing with us. All of us have our calendars up and Carl's like,
No, July is open. I don't have a social life. I don't know what anxiety attack I'm gonna have at this point, so.
Just come solve it with some good home-cooked food.
yeah, come, meat
Which one of my
barbecue.
little consulting gigs is gonna decide that it's
Do we
gonna,
wanna,
you know,
I'll just toss out, last year we did it on a Thursday night, which I think was a Thursday night.
Thursday nights.
Which is nice because it doesn't conflict with anybody's weekend plans or anything like that.
Thursday, the 18th, I'll be flying to Seattle for a wedding,
Right.
but it doesn't stop anybody else.
Or the Wednesday before that, maybe, I don't know. I mean, do we wanna do it after our our July VAR, does it matter? Wanna rule out,
We never know how long the docket is, so if we started like at this time with,
not immediately.
We started the Christmas party at 10 o'clock.
you're right. Wait, what am I
And you all
thinking,
stayed
Ron?
till 1.
No, Jeff did, until your wife put him out on the street with a bottle of something, is what he said.
She politely walked me to the door, yeah, it was very nice.
I never thought about that's the way to kick guests out. Like,
you
whatever
go.
they're drinking, remove it from your
Roll it
home,
out.
put it out in the public right away.
Dangle it.
Isn't
Yeah.
that, somebody
Party
told me a
favor.
story about one of the president's inauguration parties, and they, like Andrew Jackson or someone had to, they basically, the White House got overwhelmed because they let everyone in, and to get them all out, they put the alcohol out on the lawn and then locked the door.
Probably
I
true.
don't know if that's true, I think that was my eighth
Well,
grade
the
history
yeah, the-
professor told me that.
No, the White House used to be open to the
Probably
public.
Pam knew
and it-
that, and
yeah.
that's why her strategy was successful that night.
I was just terrified I was gonna knock something over in their You know, that the house was like a,
gallery?
yeah. All right, so,
Do we want to say
Keep talking.
July 11th is the,
I say yes.
for that?
to me.
It's open for me.
I will be at the
You're
Contemporary American Theater Festival in
You're
Shepherdstown.
flying somewhere else? Gosh,
So,
July 25th?
25th?
I could probably host that. If we're looking for, are we looking for a place? Or
That would be the second question, yeah.
Oh, I thought James, you were hosting us.
Brett got a really new cool table in his backyard. It would be,
I'm good, you know, hopefully get a smoker by then.
and a smoke.
All right, I'm hearing July 25th.
Yes.
I'll be in
Can do.
Chicago.
3 Thursdays in a row?
Ron, maybe you just need to come up
Yeah.
with,
Ron, you need to cancel something
We
here.
we don't have to do it on Thursday. I mean, we can do it on
Well, he's
Wednesday.
probably gone the rest of the month too. It's not just there for a day.
I guess
How about,
Wednesdays-
Why don't you tell us what your availability is, Ron? and we'll
I think the
look around.
17th would be a splendid day. It's also Ashura.
What's Ashura?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
It's
but
a-
we're gonna do-
it's
Oh, I
a
see that
Persian
too.
holiday.
We'll have to look at that.
That's probably,
Yeah, how about Wednesday?
Day after BAR.
Wednesday the 17th?
as long as it doesn't ban out.
Can we look, can we stand to be with each other 2 nights in a row?
I like you guys. I mean, I don't know if you like me, but I like you guys.
Then we have a meeting to talk about.
So,
But Ron could be.
17th,
Are
Yep.
you there are you here the 17th?
Yeah.
Okay.
7/17.
And you're hosting, Breck?
I think so, let me confirm.
At this
but,
point,
Now, does that mean you're doing the meet or James is doing the meet in
I will,
advance?
Last
welcome.
time I did a butt, and I think somebody else did brisket. Did
Yeah,
David?
David brought brisket.
Yeah.
Let's, we'll coordinate.
Do something different.
Can,
How I did that brisket. Did I
I'll-
use your
I'll volunteer
smoker?
Pamela
Where's your smoker
watermelon
now?
salad.
it's a longer
Just send an
conversation.
email chain out to
Yeah.
coordinate.
I didn't,
Why did I
I
make
couldn't
last
come
year?
last year, so I'm
Yeah,
excited.
you did.
Yeah, were
You
there.
did?
Oh, you're at the party at your place?
I couldn't go last year.
Oh, but it was raining, that's why I'm thinking
What I'll
that I
probably
was
do
outside.
is
Okay.
just take that day off and anybody that wants to use the smoker that day can bring stuff.
Ooh, I might do like seafood or something, like salmon or
Yeah.
something.
That's
They
good.
do it good.
That's a really good.
So are we putting it
Oh,
on
you
the
can-
17th on the calendar?
Think that's
now?
Yes.
Let's do
At this
it.
point, yes. I think
He's-
the street work will be done
Is there-
too.
Depends on the swim team.
Don't say that.
Yeah, it's usually Wednesdays.
Yes.
John Franklin's talking about. not
This man
having
knows his content.
competition.
Yeah, we'll have the swim team for sure, I think. I think I may have signed up for one of those volunteer positions
My
then.
son says he just wants to do the practice squad this year.
Hmm.
Okay, Carl actually has his calendar open, so he's willing to put us on there temporarily, tentatively. Okay, awesome. Yay.
how David's gonna mess that up.
I know, David's like,
I mean, we'll find a way around the swim team. Don't let me hold it up.
is swim team earlier in
It's
the week
usually.
or later?
It's all day long.
It's very
I mean,
long.
it's
On a
like-
Wednesday?
Yeah, it's always Wednesdays. It's like 5 till 10. Swim meets are absolute, they're rough.
Swim parents. Oh, you swim?
Sandy's in New York that weekend. We could wreck my house if necessary, but
Oh, no, I'm good. I didn't volunteer that day.
Oh, all right.
Yay, okay. So
You won't
July
go.
16th.
17th.
July 16th,
16th
BAR.
is the meeting.
I'm sorry, it's somehow switched to the 16th while I was trying to remember, okay. And 5 o'clock at Breck's, 5:30,
TBD,
TBD.
Okay.
it's a placeholder. All right, so quickly.
Did you find what you were looking for?
I did. It was in front of me all along. So, this is sort of a broad but specific question. And 409 Park Street, interesting, neat old building. Someone has bought it and wants to put a fence up. My first question to them was that you're not touching the historic fence front. No. But
We have a little tiny building in the back.
there's this building next to it that I always thought was connected, but it's not. It's like 1 inch off of,
Right.
and it's separate. So it's some sort of fence along this side. The north side gets a little strange because not quite sure where the property line is. I'm gonna I'll work that out with the, but this is the back facing the courts. So now we have done we approved some fences next door. This is 2 down. So we have some precedent for wood fences painted, and I think that's all they're looking at.
You mean on the backside?
On the back, and it would be, I said that whatever they did on the front, really, at least to the face of the house, this height dictates. So I'd like to get to where fencing is not something I have to bring to you all. I know it's unofficial now, but I tend to treat something like, if it's not a big deal, an administrative review, and not an email review, but I treat it, a formal, but formally an administrative review, which is the $100 fee. I don't. The intent is to keep the boxwoods, I believe, but I don't know. It's not. Would you all be okay with me approving fences?
Yes.
And it's not to approve this fence. It's not to. It's just saying. I think.
Is it our decision to make this?
Under
the ordinance, you can.
Well,
approve it? You just are bringing them to us?
I'm going to interpret the ordinance as, that this could be a minor review. There aren't things that are specific, but I think that fences, and I think you all know me. I know you. We know what's been allowed, and I think some of these things can be done administratively, and I'm not bothering you. So I'm telling you that I'm probably going to be approving some fences as administrative reviews. You will know about them, but unless something's really, somebody wants to do an 8-foot fence in the front yard, I'm going to be, this would be a painted fence, dark, no discussion, it would be painted dark. It wouldn't be any higher than that, but one of the challenges here is that this is something that Carl has to go through the development plan. So where it used to be that only a site plan had to be created or revised for a commercial property, but maybe something like this, they would just mark it on the site plan or whatever plan existed. Now things have to go through a full-blown development plan for everything. So I'm trying to find a way to not have the BAR be an extra problem in that process. So if there are things that I can review in that site plan and now in that development plan process, so you'll be hearing more about it, but everything requires development plan.
Out of curiosity, why is someone turning this back into a house?
Not sure.
That's what I heard.
Be nice if they did.
Great. That is the only reason I could think you'd want a fence, because otherwise it seems kind of.
Yeah.
Claustrophobic.
The person that acquired it didn't say, but we are seeing, interest in these as residents. This coming into Park Street and some of these big houses, and people are. They're the gentleman that has.
They're being underutilized as a
Yeah.
commercial use, so it's
Why not?
perfect.
Yep.
Since we were talking about fences and this came up, am I just going crazy? But I recall there being a 6 to 8 page fences guideline especially for downtown. A separate, not the little 1 page that we used to have that we have in our guidelines. There was a separate fences manual. No? Okay. Maybe it's just me. I'll have to look, see if I can.
I'll poke around. I haven't seen it, but I think it's what we're, again, working towards, some of these things to say, here's the stuff that's okay, and maybe, some parameters, but all right, on that one. The next one's a little more complicated. This is 503 16th Street Northwest, but again, it can be, it can, serve as an example for lots of other discussions. Original 1930s house, it was expanded in 1990. So this is 16th Street here, Gordon Avenue down here. And on the site is, when they did the addition, they built this brick wall down here enclosed. There's a parking lot, and then there's like underneath, you can see the parking spaces. All right, so there's. Do I? My bad.
That's okay.
Yeah, I get confused, wander around hallways. So there is a non-historic brick wall there. Now this is, you had that preliminary discussion a few weeks ago, or with the design develop project about a block away. So that there is on Gordon Ave, there's this large right-of-way there. So that's not an error. But the non-historic brick wall is being heaved by these two oak trees. And so it's a chicken and egg kind of thing here. I had suggested to them so here's the wall, and there are the two trees that we're talking about. I don't know, I haven't been out there. I don't know the extent of, what it's done to the wall. I had said, well, you can always, do something like I could not find a picture of that arch that's at UVA, but, that's one thing to do. But the other is, if there's trees, and I don't know if the species of tree, if there's others that are preferable to being adjacent to a brick wall, but you can knock down the brick wall and save the trees, but being a sorority that they would, want to maintain that enclosure, and I understand that. Thing is, if they knock down the wall, then guess what? The new ordinance kicks in, creates some problems with building a new wall. So they've been in touch with Vanieri's about options, and of course, the Vanieri's saying, what can we do to save the trees? I don't want to get into the whole zoning headache, but it's sort of a which.
They're oaks.
Yeah. What'd you say?
They're oaks.
Yes. And then just on this side, on the other side, there are two on the front of, facing 16th. This one is fine. The other, its twin, is dying, so that's going to be replaced. So they're going to have to remove 3 large trees, replace them somehow to get their tree canopy, and I don't know how. And I don't know if there's a tree that doesn't heave a brick wall, but the question is sort of, I don't think, to me, I've said to them, the BAR would prefer to keep trees. A non-historic brick wall is not critical. And if it had to end up being a fence or something, that'd probably be, but I still wanted to give you all an opportunity to.
For those of us who are not familiar with what can be done with a wall and under the new zoning ordinance, tell us why you and Carl were chuckling in that. Sorry, I don't know.
I mean, if they knock it down entirely, they're not allowed to put a wall there,
They're not allowed to put a wall at all.
Why?
because it's in a front yard. It can't be that tall, at least. I think you could still put a wall there.
Could you put a fence?
Well, it's the discussion of what's the front street and the side street, and,
Can you put a fence there?
But it's the screening for their parking lot.
Yeah.
Parking, it can't be the front of the house.
the zoning complicates it.
It's a non-compliant. But I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, is because it's non-compliant, it's always one of those things where you just can't make it worse, I thought.
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's, yeah.
They look like pretty good
You
oaks.
can't aggravate the non-conformity.
Yeah, so, those are 30-year-old trees, if not more.
It'd be pretty dumb to like cut those trees down and put a tree that wouldn't heave
Yeah.
a
Yes.
brick wall.
No.
I mean, if they could just like tear down a part of the wall and like expand out or something, or,
Well, what about that little arch thingy you were showing?
yeah.
Yeah, I do have a detailed from where we did that at the wall, at one of the walls at UVA. Like, I could share that. if
I just
that's
don't know the
helpful.
extent that, I mean, again, I haven't been out there. I mean, I don't know if they're pushing up
Well, no, here's.
half the wall.
Well, here's the question. You could say, you can't cut down the trees, but you can take out the wall, or you have this other third thing you can do, which is have these little arches put in, or tear the wall.
Or, yeah, so I'd like to,
Otherwise, no wall, we're fine.
It seems
Where's
like
the
if it's
front
the portions directly next to the trees, there's also big hedges outside the wall. So if they needed to remove a section of the wall, it doesn't seem like it would still feel pretty solid from the street.
Who, like, who enforces the zoning ordinance that they can't rebuild their wall?
Yeah.
Because I mean, no,
Because you would just get a mason out there
well,
and rebuild
seriously,
it.
it's
not a building,
it's a
it's not
judgment
like a
call.
building permit.
Mhm.
right? It's like you were saying earlier, like everything's within context. I am curious where the front door of the 1930s house was.
I think it had a little
It
entrance.
says porch to be removed.
Yeah, there was, oh, this is,
New.
that's a 1990s plan. Don't
Right.
read anything on it.
Right.
No, but
Where do you see porch removed?
existing porch removed.
I think the entrance was here and they,
Turn this-
Existing
turn this
entrance
window
into
into a
walk.
door.
So it faced
Existing
on
entrance
Gordon?
There you
into
go.
walk room.
Yeah, it was right there.
yeah.
So the entrance is on 16th Street. Right.
But it's already gone.
So,
Like you can build an argument. I mean, I don't know, like, I feel like it's silly to say you can't rebuild a wall that's there.
yeah, that's, you've strengthened me on the tree thing and that,
Yeah.
and I want to say, and then to them is, BAR will work with you on how you fix it. And it may be sections of the wall remain and sections of the,
Or
get
leave
infill.
enough of the wall standings, even if it's up here, and then make a very large repair to work your wall around the trees.
Okay, good idea. And that leads to a
Each one
question
brick needs to still be mortared, you know?
that
The wall needs to be serpentine.
I mean, it's one way to get it around a
Yeah.
tree.
Courtyards.
So one of the,
Mandatory.
the questions that I was asked, they said, well, some of the wall sections are, and again, I haven't been out there, all I have is Google view. This is the wall here on the left. They said if they had to, where there's some cap that's damaged or it's broken up, if they came back and where they had to fix the cap, were to use a stone or a cast stone, I told them I didn't think there would be any problem with that, but that I would ask you all. And
Is this
again,
the
not
owner
asking to
asking
approve.
you, or-
1990s brick
I
wall.
haven't-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is this the owner or management company or?
They don't
House
like
court?
that it's brick at the top?
it's a very nice alum who's volunteered to help usher this through. So, I'm really trying to be as helpful as I can, because they got a lot going on over there. They have a lot they need to do, and I'm trying to strip away as much of, like, they've got some of the slab that goes into the entrance is cracked and dropped, and
Is
it's.
everybody good with saying Jeff, we feel comfortable with
Yeah.
Jeff? Okay.
And
No
I
discussion.
I agree with you all on that, and so the trees are paramount, and we'll figure out the wall.
Okay.
That's all I had. That's all I had. And then, let's see, yeah, I mentioned everything else. Hopefully, I have some good news for you in a couple weeks, or a week, and someone will help get some of the, get my mess cleaned up. I know my boss was at my trip in Cincinnati, and I heard
It's gonna blow up.
repeatedly, when are we gonna get you the
Tell us it's
guidelines?
time.
We will get to them.
Set a timer.
Wait, I don't like that. Sorry, I'm just trying to do my job. I'll stop.
We were just laughing about, we don't know what this noise is, but there's like a noise that's getting louder.
Oh, it
There's a
sound-
ghost in there.
yeah, I feel like we're on a creaking,
Yeah,
in the
Tom.
old
Has this
Nate.
building always, I mean,
It's the first time it's creaked like this.
I
Yeah.
have not heard that. I feel like it's shimming and it's louder than it ever
It
has been.
definitely is.
It's,
Sometimes somebody's
Ahoy.
flying down that parking garage.
Yeah, but you-
I move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. Here you go, James.